Good evening, everybody. My name is Przeslawski, and I am a marine scientist in Canberra. So today I want to talk a little bit about offshore wind farms. There's been a lot of misinformation and disinformation going around. Some of you might have seen some headlines. I just want to step back a bit and let you know a little bit about the complexities and the nuance so that we might actually have a chance of achieving this industry. So, a little bit about me. I have completed the bingo card of work sectors during my career. It's not over yet. I have worked in state government. I've worked in an NGO. I've worked in academia. I've worked in the private sector. I just opened my own company last week. Hey, business partner. And, of course, the good old APS. So, I do wear a lot of hats, some of them actually in here for real. But, for the purpose of this talk, I am going to identify as a benthic ecologist. So, what is that? Well, benthic means bottom, so, of course, I study ocean bottoms. Which means I study life on the seafloor and around it. I don't know what you guys are thinking. Now, you might have picked up a subtle and not so nasally accent. I really wish I could claim Canadian. I really do. But, unfortunately, I grew up on what we now know as the wrong side of the border. Michigan. Also known as America's high five state, and they definitely need that now, don't they? So I came out to Australia as a study abroad student to the University of Wollongong in '99, a while ago now. Before I arrived, I remember my university back in Michigan sent us a pamphlet on Australian culture. I was so excited. It said Australians have a teasing and jocular sense of humor, and that the more they make fun of you, the more they like you. So I must have taken that advice to heart, because on the second day in the country, I met my future husband at the pub, and he obviously cared about me, because 25 years later, he still calls me his favorite butt face. Over the course of my career, I've actually become quite passionate about environmental sustainability and the ocean environment. So in the current political climate, this of course makes me an American refugee. Now, right before I moved to Canberra, right after, they started building these wind farms in what I thought was a giant field with lots of cows. This is that giant field a few weeks ago from a kayak that I took. Those poor cows. But anyways, Australia now has heaps of onshore wind farms. You guys have all seen this one. There's heaps more around, and there's more being built. This helps us meet our legislated net zero target. But we're also looking to develop the same industry offshore in the ocean environment. But why would we ever put wind turbines out to sea? They're larger, they're more expensive, and they're further away from the electricity grid than their land-based counterparts. Well, it comes down to available energy. Now, you might think that there's actually a lot of hot air in certain parts of Australia, Clive Palmer, but the wind is actually much stronger and more consistent over our oceans. So onshore wind farms typically generate up to 600 megawatts per farm, while offshore wind farms that are being considered in Australia would generate up to 2 gigawatts. So that's 3 times more than our onshore wind farms. And that's comparable to the largest coal-fired plant that we already have in Australia. So to put this in terms that are relevant to Canberrans, which is most of you, this is about 4 million e-scooters a year. Spoiler, that is too many. So the Australian government has now declared 6 offshore wind zones. Sorry, you guys probably can't see it over there, but these little green polygons here, those are where our offshore wind farms could go. And you can see most of them are concentrated between Victoria and Tasmania in that Bass Strait area. But despite all the kerfuffle that you might have heard in the media and on social media, we don't yet have a single commercial wind turbine in Australia. And the earliest estimates put the first wind farm at 2030, that's Star of the South. So we're not going to have anything until 2030, and yet it sounds like it's already happening, and it's happening too quickly, and it's all very scary. So why don't we have any offshore wind farms right now? Well, obviously that's because of the Liberals. Yeah. And Labour. And probably the minor parties too, let's be honest. So I put some of the challenges on the previous slide that we had, but community opposition is the one I really want to talk about from this one here. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation going around, so I just thought I would do my greatest hits very quickly on these points. First one, people say it's logistically impossible This is not true. Australia has an excellent research and development capacity. You've heard from some of our speakers before, and you'll hear from some later on. We can do this. We just need to put our back into it. We would not want to ruin our pristine ocean vista with these horrible turbines, would we? That would be awful. A lot of people have claimed the process is shrouded in secrecy. So this is actually a screenshot from a Facebook post for the RV Investigator, which is Australia's national marine facility. They run excellent social media, excellent media. You can see where the ship is going and what it's doing. All the science on it is set 2 to 3 years beforehand. So this particular survey was well advertised and promoted, and yet you still had people on social media claiming that it was a secret wind farm survey by the government. It was actually an oceanographic and climate survey that had been planned 3 years before. So, I'm just going to leave this here to shine in all its glory. That one hurts. And then the one I'm really interested in is the environmental impacts. So this was a billboard that was seen at the beginning and the end of your drive into Port Stephens last year. It's very sensationalized. Anybody could figure out that this is not true. Wind farms are not going to be that close. There has been no recorded whale death due to wind farms. Doesn't mean they're not having an impact, but you can't say it's causing beaching or mortality. So this is what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in that environmental impact, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Part of my job is to figure out what's on the ocean floor and how it might be affected by developments like this. But I am not going to spend time on whales, dolphins, and seabirds, because let's be honest, they get enough attention and they are the media whores of marine science. Also remember, I'm a benthic ecologist, so you don't generally see many whales having a kip on the seafloor. So I'm going to use worms as an example. My favorite. Not those kind of worms. So let me introduce you to polychaetes. I'm going to talk a bit about these guys, but just remember what I'm saying can apply to other benthic critters that live on the seafloor too. So polychaetes are a group of phyla in Annelida. Sorry, they're in the group, the phylum Annelida. That's the earthworms. So they're very similar to those, but they're in the marine environment. And listen, they're a lot sexier than marine earthworms, or than earthworms, right? So they're generally small, less than 10 centimeters, but you can get some that are up to 3 meters. So it's a good thing we weren't talking about those other kind of worms, hey? Many are scavengers and detritivores. They play really important roles in nutrient cycling, sediment oxygenation, really similar to the earthworms that we have in our gardens. You can see the Christmas tree worm here. Some of them are filter feeders. Some of them even make reefs. You see those up in Sydney. So they're important, but unlike those bloody whales and dolphins, we don't have any movies on them, right? I mean, that's your benchmark as a marine critter. So I have yet to see a movie based on a polychaete, but if there's any budding filmmakers out here, they're ripe for it, okay? Now, offshore wind farm construction can certainly have negative impacts to our little worm friends. Most wind turbines around Australia are going to be fixed foundation, which means there's going to be infrastructure put into the seabed. And usually, inhabitants of a particular place aren't too fond of having giant structures placed directly over the top of them. Also, we're not just talking about isolated turbines, we're talking about multiple turbines all over the ocean. And so these can actually act as stepping stones for pest organisms, little pest worms, again, not the kind from before, who can actually use those wind turbines to colonize areas that they might not normally be able to get to. On the flip side, once the wind turbine's installed, and once you have that infrastructure, there's actually some valuable new real estate on offer, okay? What do I mean by this? The ocean is a soup of larvae, poop, eggs, sperm. I want you guys to all think about that next time you gulp some seawater. So this means that any structure in the ocean is very quickly colonized by marine organisms. So you end up with what we call an artificial reef. And this is essentially a new neighborhood of happy worms, their fish friends, and their media whore friends. See it, the whales and dolphins even. But the biggest positive impact often gets overlooked when we talk about these local impacts. And that's the fact that at the end of the day, the whole point of these wind farms is to make sustainable energy that will help reduce our emissions, prevent our oceans from heating up, and ultimately protect those animals that we care about, even the dolphins and whales. So listen, I've given you a bit of a tasting plate of some of the risks and opportunities about wind farms, but there's actually a lot more that I didn't talk about. So I've done what any good scientist does, and I put up a complicated infographic that you probably can't read. Okay. But it's actually even more complicated than this infographic would lead you to believe, because they're not the only pressure out there. We have fishing. We have shipping. We have sediment plumes from agricultural land clearing. And we also have climate change stressors, a whole heap of those, just to name a few. So, bottom line here. Australia's first offshore wind farms will not be operational until at least 2030. The potential environmental impacts are complex, and they are actually about more than just the whales and the sunsets. So, at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that if we are putting structures in the ocean, on the ocean bottom, then we are at least being safe about it. Thank you very much.